Hey everyone, Evan here. In this episode of The Nen Behind Them, I'm going to be talking about Isaac Netero and his 100-type Guanyin Bodhisattva. I'm going to be going into a lot of Buddhist teachings, and there's no way I can fully do the topic justice, so I suggest you do your own research if the topic interests you. I've left the sources I used for this video in the description to give you a place to start. Also, like and subscribe and all that. To start, here's a quick overview of Netero's Nen. No one seems to know whether his 100-type Guanyin Bodhisattva is a conjuration, mission, manipulation, or transmutation ability, but I'd argue it's all of these. He can conjure up the statue, and he manipulates it through his prayer, as seen in his fight against Meruem, change the property of his Nen to something resembling a serene grassy field using transmutation, as seen in his scuffle with Pitu, and he can emit his Nen as a powerful blast, as seen with his Zero Hand against Meruem. I'd also guess that he uses enhancement to strengthen the attacks of the statue, as his Nen type lies in enhancement. Using every possible Nen type, other than specialization, which you can't learn unless you're a specialist, fall in line with the theme of Netero having reached enlightenment, which I'll get into more later. To understand how Netero's Nen reflects him as a character, we first have to learn who Guanyin is and what it means to be a Bodhisattva. There have been many meanings of Bodhisattva over the course of history, but the definitions I'll be using here are either a being that's able to attain nirvana or enlightenment, but delays doing so for the sake of others, or a spiritual being, kind of like a deity. Netero lies under the first definition, and Guanyin lies under the second. Guanyin is a spiritual being that embodies compassion. I'm going to start by going over how Netero is related to Guanyin, and then later I'll go over how he himself is a bodhisattva. On an aesthetic level, Netero shares many similarities with Guanyin. Guanyin is usually depicted in a flowing white robe, riding on a dragon, and is often accompanied by two children. Netero also often wears a flowing white robe. He enters the castle invasion on a dragon, and the two children could be represented by Killua and Gon. Guanyin is also often depicted with 1,000 arms, which is reflected in Netero's ability having a myriad of hands. Guanyin, embodying compassion, goes in line with many of the themes surrounding Netero's character, which I will go into more detail on when I explain how he represents being a bodhisattva. Netero having reached enlightenment seems impossible at first glance. Buddhism teaches strict nonviolence, and Netero is a man that loves battle above all else. In order to uncover how he embodies Buddhist ideals, we need to look at him in the context of the world of Hunter x Hunter. In the world of Hunter x Hunter, spirituality is directly tied to battle. What I mean by this is that there is an undeniable energy within everyone known as aura. When one gains control of their aura, they can study Nen, and Nen is intimately tied to battle. Improving one's Nen is done through training and combat, so we can look not at how Netero embodies nonviolence, but at why he fights, the journey he took to becoming a powerful fighter, and the way in which he impacts those around him. This is where the answer lies on how he embodies being a bodhisattva. In order to explain what it means to be a bodhisattva and reach enlightenment, you have to understand the 4 vows that lead to enlightenment. The vows go as follows. The many beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Greed, hatred, and ignorance rise endlessly. I vow to abandon them. Dharma Gates are countless. I vow to wake to them. Buddha's way is unsurpassed. I vow to embody it fully. The many beings are numberless. I vow to save them. At first, it seems like a stretch to say that Netero wants to save anyone. It's easy to say that he was looking for a powerful adversary and that's it, but I believe Netero was a more selfless man than he seems at first glance. When he mastered his punch of gratitude, he didn't go out to take over the world. He took over a dojo and taught others. He shared his knowledge, and later became a leader and inspiration for others as the chairman of the Hunter Association. He wanted others to become strong as well, even if his methods were dangerous, as shown by the hazardous Hunter exam. Most hunters under him thought that he was a bit crazy, but had intense amounts of admiration and care for him. He recognized the cruelty of the world where he lived, and recognized that individual power is incredibly important and necessary to becoming a hunter. I'd even argue that the harshness of the Hunter exam is a form of kindness, preparing applicants for the dark, treacherous path that awaits them after passing. When he faced off against Meruem, he ended up not wanting to fight him. He thought to himself that he had to fight before he started to agree with the Ant King. And in the end, he made the ultimate selfless sacrifice, giving his own life in order to save humanity. He lived his life for others along with his pursuit for ultimate power, or in this context, enlightenment. Greed, hatred, and ignorance rise endlessly. I vow to abandon them. Netero was never interested in the material. He wasn't interested in conquering or ruling or possessions. He wanted to give his heart and soul in battle. He also never discriminated, seeing everyone's value based on their self-reliance, not on their gender or race. Interestingly, he was the only human other than Komugi to see Meruem as anything besides a monster. He saw the king for who he was, a being wavering between being a human and an ant. He saw Meruem's situation more clearly than anyone and held no hatred in his heart for the king, only gratitude. Dharma Gates are countless. I vow to wake to them. Dharma Gates are a pretty abstract concept and are a bit hard to explain. They exist everywhere and they lie beyond what the unenlightened can see. To open the Dharma Gate means to see beyond, to see a truth that was always in front of you, but that you could never see before. In order to relate this to Netero, we can look at how the Buddha opened his Dharma Gates. After years and years of studying and training, the Buddha felt he had reached his peak, that he couldn't go any higher. So he decided to isolate himself and meditate and watch the world. After sitting still for an incredibly long amount of time, he looked up and suddenly he saw the world for what it was. He gained a new understanding that couldn't have been achieved through normal study and training. Does that story sound familiar? It's exactly how Netero mastered his punch of gratitude. He trained in the martial arts until he felt he had reached his peak, then isolated himself to throw 10,000 punches of gratitude a day and spend the rest of his time in prayer. Then one day, he looked up and realized he'd mastered the technique. This was his metaphorical opening of the Dharma Gates. The Buddha's way is unsurpassed. I vow to embody it fully. In order to understand what the way of the Buddha is, we have to learn about the Noble Eightfold Path. It is the teaching of the Buddha, the path to enlightenment and an escape from suffering. The paths go as follows: right understanding, right resolve, right speech, right actions, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration or meditation. Right understanding. This path involves an understanding of the collective, of something larger than oneself, and of the suffering of the world. When Meruem talks to Netero about the inequality of humanity and says he'd create a world of pure equality, Netero doesn't disagree with him. He even seems inclined to agree with the king, but given the responsibilities on his shoulders, he knows that he must fight then and there. And then, at the end of their battle, Netero tells the king, "Don't underestimate humans, Meruem. You know nothing of the bottomless malice within the human heart." Nedra was fully aware of the darkness within humanity, and knew that he was only victorious because of that darkness. The narrator states as the bomb explodes, "Were humans so different from ants? How could Netero not have considered this question as he made his choice?" Netero understands what's best for humanity and acts on that above his own wants. He understands the suffering of the world and the potential for evil that humanity possesses. Right resolve. This path involves holding altruism, goodwill, and an opposition to cruelty. This may seem like a contradiction, as the way Netero defeats Meruem was undeniably cruel, but the context of why he did what he did is important. Even while knowing the darkness within humanity, Netero decided to give his life to protect the human race. He was in a position where he could have not fought Meruem and lived at the expense of countless human lives, but he chose to sacrifice himself for beings he knew were no better than the ants. His resolve was ironclad, and he did what he knew was right, even when he himself was close to being swayed by the Ant King. Right speech. This path involves speaking the truth. Interestingly, the way in which Netero got the king to fight him in the first place was by using truth, the Ant King's name. He also followed his side of the bargain, and after his trump card, well, the first one anyway, failed, he effectively admitted defeat and told Meruem his name, when he could have easily not have and just killed the king. He had lost the battle using his own power, but humanity had won the war using its technology. Right action. This path involves not killing or causing others pain. This is directly contradicted by Netero's actions, as he kills squadrons worth of ants, then the king, and also indirectly Komugi, Poof, and Yuppie. The answer to how he can still be enlightened while killing involves again the circumstances of the world he lived in, and his responsibilities as chairman. When he was first killing ants, he didn't see them as humans, so killing them wasn't off the table. When it came to the king, he saw him as at least partially human, but knew that sparing the king would mean the death of countless humans. He was in an impossible situation, and chose to go against his own feelings and do what was right for humanity. Am I saying Netero would never kill anyone? No. Netero is a fighter, and I'm sure he would kill. But this is the world of Hunter x Hunter, where it's pretty hard to function without killing. In this way, Netero doesn't fulfill this path very well, but he does so as well as he could in the world he lives in. Right livelihood. This path involves doing work that helps others. As a martial arts teacher, Netero helped students become stronger and was kind to them. As the chairman of the Hunter Association, much of the work he did benefited others. The Hunter Association is really just a vehicle for individuals to follow their dreams, whether that dream is to discover new things, become a doctor, or fulfill some other personal want. Netero helped all these dreams come true, even if indirectly, and his work helped countless people. Right effort. This path involves developing habits such as meditation and helping others. Netero touches on this when he's thinking back on his life. He thinks to when he was a teacher of the martial arts and would spar with his students. After he would inevitably win, he would always reach out a hand to help his students stand, and they would graciously accept. This habit was one of respect and kindness. He also clearly had a habit of meditation, as shown in his training in the mountains. Right mindfulness. This path involves an awareness of the self and the subconscious. This is explored during Netero's fight with Meruem. It's a battle of attrition, where Netero must choose the right attack time and time again without a single mistake, and Meruem is looking for the subconscious rhythm to Netero's attacks. The king wins because it was a losing battle for Netero from the start, but the narrator speaks to the level at which Netero avoided any biases. The narrator says, "The king sought the faint light through the needle's eye, the imperceptible bias in Netero's moves, a bias so slight it could not even be called a habit. The king found the path and reached its end." Netero was well aware of himself and didn't have any habits, but the king was above human levels of endurance and intelligence. Netero didn't stand a chance from the start, but held more of a chance than anyone else could, that we know of anyway. His self-awareness allowed him to fight without habit and be much more unpredictable. Right concentration or meditation. This path involves deep concentration and total focus. The body should listen to the mind, not the other way around. This is exemplified after Netero loses his leg and he wills the wounds to close. He also doesn't lose his ability to use Nen after one of his arms is ripped off, and he tells Meruem that his prayer doesn't come from his hands, but his heart. Netero's Nen ability, being so deeply tied to Buddhism, reflects his character perfectly. He's the closest to the Buddhist ideals a person could get in the harsh world of Hunter x Hunter, and he's a much more selfless and altruistic person than most give him credit for. He was strong enough to leave everyone else behind and live only for fighting, but he chose to be a teacher and then the chairman of the Hunter Association to help others grow, making him a Bodhisattva. This has been Evan. Thank you for watching.